For being here. Hope you're all very excited as much as we are to be here at AWS Community Day. I am Andy Rajagopalan, and here's my colleague David Jenkins. We both are cloud solutions architect at Atlassian. So, briefly about myself, I'm an ex puppet person, ex network plumber. I started my career at Cisco at the lower levels of the OSI stack and then moved up through a variety of roles. And over the last couple of years, I've been focused on building and designing application infrastructures to run on the public or private clouds. I'll let David introduce himself in a minute, and we are here to share our story on how we moved away from SSH, bash and host, traditional shell scripts, configuration methods, and switched completely over to AWS SSM for our day-to-day infrastructure needs.
Hello, how's it going? I'm David Jenkins, Cloud Solutions Architect, and work with Andy. We're on the field operations team at Atlassian, and we're really excited to be here. Former software engineer, actually, at NASA, had a career out there for about 10 years. Transitioned over to Atlassian almost 3 years ago, and I've been working on a variety of different AWS solutions, including deployment of our data center products for our enterprise customers. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. So AWS and Atlassian have a long-standing relationship, and we use the AWS services for pretty much everything we do in our organization. Our entire SaaS product runs entirely on AWS. So offering the platform is really running about 1,000 services with over 10 billion requests per day flowing through AWS, load balancers in production. This is all done and handled through tens of thousands of AWS resources, spanning dozens of different AWS products and services. That's all of our SaaS cloud offering within Atlassian. You guys are probably familiar with Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, and those cloud SaaS offerings. Those are all entirely run on AWS. So we work for the field operations group. Our organization is large, 450 people spanning our organization, and we touch all different areas of Atlassian, actually. And so we have 3 different AWS accounts that Andy and I manage through the field operations account. And they span a number of different services. So that's like external customer-facing demo environments, internal training, flagship events like Summit, and an open tour, which we just came back from Vienna yesterday, doing hands-on labs with lots of customers and partner training. We're running all these demo environments through there, and we're really proud of the infrastructure that we have set up and all of the details that we use to manage our teams. We have a number of different permission layers for our internal teams, as well as when we run training labs and actually have external customers and partners using our AWS accounts. We have a number of different IAM policies and roles and types of different ways that we can allow external facing customers actually use those accounts. Some of which we blow away after usage, but some of them we keep long standing and are pretty interesting the way that we use them. So let's talk about some of the existing issues with trying to SSH into your overall instances and why we've actually moved to SSM entirely at AWS. So Andy and I both joined our team about a year ago. I was with the previous team within Atlassian before that. Andy was at Puppet, but the use of SSH and bash and host is starting to get phased out of what we do on normal practice every day. So we've provisioned and maintain Bastion host to log in via SSH to all of our EC2 instances. There are a lot of material out there that you guys may have heard. They're about vulnerabilities with trying to SSH into Bastion host and so forth. But with some of these technologies in SSL, TLS, and we had our own vulnerabilities that we've experienced. Like things like Poodle and Heartbleed, crime, etc. There are a lot of articles and blogs that even AWS has written about vulnerabilities within some of these items here that we don't have to get into more detail today, but you all have probably experienced in the past. And some reasons why we've chosen to kind of move forward and use SSM exclusively for access to environments. So for key management, this was another painful process for us. We're used to try to constantly maintain people's credentials, having them on the Bastion host. Cycling through credentials is always a problem, as employees are here and then they're gone the next day, and maybe have outdated keys that aren't used anymore, or are used on different deployments that are no longer needed. And that whole life cycle process of managing keys like that can just be a pain. I think a lot of you have probably experienced that in the past. So for parameter limitations in CloudFormation, and parameter limits, we provision all of the tech stack mostly on CloudFormation for the majority of the things that we do. So we quickly ran into parameter limitations on CloudFormation. We can supply only 60 parameters via a lot of the templates that we use in CloudFormation in our tech stacks, like Jira, Bitbucket, Confluence, Crowd, and they require a lot of setup overall to run. So we're restoring these product parameters via shell scripts and running them at startup. With Yum patching and updates, we've used to run Yum updates all the time on our instances. And one of the ways that we're using and leveraging SSM is we're actually able to run batch processes across all the instances that are running for that 450 people within our organization. They're using this on a daily basis. And run batch commands across to kind of keep vulnerabilities down, stay up to date with things, and really manage our overall systems as a whole to get a better capture on governance and maintenance across our entire organization. So this is just some of the ways that Atlassian is using SSM to kind of help manage our overall environment within our field operations organization and beyond. I'll kick it off to my colleague Andy to talk you through how we started using some more of SSM within our org.
Thank you, David. Yeah. So when we decided to switch over to SSM, right, we first wanted to do it in a more phased manner, but we wanted to start with something that will provide the biggest impact. So the first thing we did was we got rid of Bastion hosts and traditional SSH methods. So no more SSH EC2 user at hostname. So next thing we did was, this was more of a serendipitous discovery for us. We wanted to run a command or make changes across like 80 or so instances, and then we discovered run command, which we have kind of fallen in love with, and we use a lot of it, and I'll talk more about that. And then layering on AWS Patch Manager on top of it was a no-brainer. So we just set a 2 a.m. PST maintenance window for every day, and we use the AWS provided patch baselines, and this has made our lives significantly easier. So this is how we kind of enforce how all of our users use exclusively SSM and not resort to traditional SSH methods. So we have created an IAM policy for all our users that does not allow you to create or manage key pairs. And we allow provisioning any of the EC2 instances only from AMIs that we as a team have vetted and have the SSM agent installed. So if you don't have the SSM agent, if you have an instance that you want to provision, then you have to come to us and let us know why you need a special instance outside of what we have provided. We exclusively use Amazon Linux instances, but if there's any exceptions, yeah, we do. But we want to make sure that there's the SSM agent installed. Then we have an IAM role that, outside of the other roles that we need for running instances in our account, like logging and so on and so forth, we have an IAM policy that includes the AWS EC2 for SSM role in it. So the requirement is when anybody spins up an instance or wants to do something, they need to add that role to all the instances that they are running. That way, it allows them to log in and manage the instance via SSM. Then we use AWS config to run a check for compliance with that requirement that we have. So that AWS configuration check is triggered each time somebody starts or stops an EC2 instance or terminates an EC2 instance. Essentially, if there's a state change on our EC2 instance setup, that rule is triggered, and that rule will go and check for the compliance status of that is all instances managed by SSM. We actually use the built-in role check, which has made things easier. So once it identifies a list of non-compliant instances, we actually use CloudWatch to filter out those non-compliant instances, and then we feed that over to AWS Lambda, which goes and triggers a function to go and attach the IAM policy that we created. So if you have an instance that is non-compliant, then CloudWatch will provide that instance ID to Lambda, and then our function will go and either it will attach that role, or if it can't, or if there's an error, it'll just stop that instance. So if somebody provisions an instance and he or she is not able to get that role in, they cannot run that instance. So they got to come back to us and say, hey, I can't run my instance. What's going on? So that's when we are like, oh, you need to make sure that this role is attached. And again, we log all the events to CloudWatch. So any errors, anything that happens, we kind of we know what's going on. So switching over to AWS SSM has had a tremendous impact for both us as account owners and for a lot of users as well. So the first thing is, we no longer need to open up port 22. Initially we had an SSH security group that allowed port 22 access only from IP subnets from within Atlassian's corporate office space. But soon, with Atlassian expanding rapidly and either acquiring new companies or growing office spaces, this kind of started becoming more troublesome, because a lot of users were like, oh, SSH connections are timing out, and then we have to go back and, oh, your IP address is not in this list. So now we no longer have that requirement. So the second thing is, we have a very good audit trail with SSM, especially. Everything is logged on to CloudWatch, who logged in, what commands they ran. So anything that we need to troubleshoot, we have a very good audit trail. And the next thing here, it pains me to say this coming from Puppet, but we use Ansible internally. So we use Ansible. We use a lot of Ansible to provision our products once the stack is deployed. And the good thing with SSM is it allows you to run your own playbooks, and you don't need to go in and log into the instance, then run your own playbook. You can run the playbook as a run command directly. And AWS has done a lot of, they put a lot of thought into SSM to make it easily adaptable. So even when I choose a run command like run an Ansible playbook, currently they support they support Chef and Salt and Ansible. I'm hoping they'll support Puppet Bolt. Yeah, so let's see. So then one of the most important things is SSM is very secure. All access is controlled completely through IAM, and we can choose whether to give users access or not, because as David said, we run a lot of boot camps and training for our partners, and our partners can access these accounts as well. So there's no reason, if a partner has console access to provision a stack, he or she does not need SSH or actual command line access. So we try to limit that using IAM. Then overall, it has made instance management a lot easier for us. We use AWS patch management. We control SSH access via IAM. We control who gets to even run what command via IAM. Like since we run training from the same accounts, there are instances wherein when you deploy Jira and when you want to make changes, you need to run one or two commands to make sure your stack is up and running, or you want to for the training purposes you want to showcase something. So we can use IAM and layer on SSM and say this is the only command that we would allow somebody to run using run command on using SSM, and it works perfectly for us. So we give all our partners in our training manual that, hey, go to run command, just run this one command, you should be able to do it. So with IAM, you're able to limit that. It's not a, hey, you get SSH access or not. Then, as I said before, right, AWS has put a lot of thought into making SSM adaptable or easy to adapt. So there's a lot of existing stuff, like even for run commands, there's a lot of existing documents that we have leveraged as is or made very little modification to. And even as I said, running an Ansible playbook, right? They give a choice of, you can upload your playbook onto S3, or you can use your own GitHub repository, or you can upload a file, or you can just copy paste a playbook. So this is like very useful for us when we don't want to run the whole playbook, or we want to run parts of a playbook, or we just say, hey, here's the playbook, go run it. So with so many choices, and I have always been a true believer of, you can have the world's best highway, but if you don't have a very good ramp to it, then there's no point of building that highway. So in that way, AWS has provided a very good, it's very easy to use AWS. It's very intuitive. So for our users, right, it's made troubleshooting a lot easier. There's no longer a need for, hey, upload my key to your instance, then I can go SSH into your instance and look at what is going on. So there's no sharing of keys that is needed. Then again, as David mentioned, right, key management was really an issue for us. We had to go prune out old keys or tell people update their keys. So we don't need to take care of any of those things. And then lastly, patching, updates, everything is more or less automated. So we can use run command to go and update either Confluence or Jira or anything that our security team says, hey, you guys are running an outdated version of Confluence, or you guys have a vulnerable version of Jira, so go update it. And for our users especially, right, when they have their day-to-day roles, no more me or David pinging them saying, hey, if you don't update this instance, you're going to get into trouble with us. And while we have made a lot of runway using SSM, there are still things that there are limitations that we have run into, and there are still further optimizations that I think we can do. So the first thing we want to do is how do we restrict SSM using IAM conditions? One of the things we want to do is within a same user set, we want to be able to restrict a set of users from gaining access only to a set of EC2 instances. While they can do it with a regular EC2 start, stop, or EC2 command set, that same capability is not available with SSM. So I personally got a ticket open with AWS for adding that IAM conditions to be able to say, hey, a set of users can SSH or can start an SSH session only into a set of EC2 instances. Right now, it's just yes or no. A user either has access to all the 100 instances or he doesn't. Then facts. If anybody has used Puppet, you know how indispensable this is. So for us personally, we want to be able to get a lot more information out of the instances that we run using something like Puppet Facts. The metadata provides only so much, and we are limited to what the metadata provides. So one of the things we want to do is we want to gain the actual operating system type that is on the instance and automatically add the patch tags to it. Right now, it's a manual process. And lastly is, yeah, okay. And lastly, we want to start using more auto-remediation state changes. We've seen that the SSM almost is like a Puppet or a Chef now, wherein you can go and maintain the state of a system. So we want to start adding our own CIS benchmarking to make sure the instances that we run are very secure. And recently, I also saw that AWS config also has some auto-remediation for some of the non-compliant instances that it identifies. So we want to start taking advantage of some more of these features. So that kind of brings us to the conclusion of this talk. This is how we have used EC2 SSM. I would love to hear from you all if you have used EC2 SSM and if you have run into the same limitations and how you guys have worked around it, or if you have any suggestions on how we can better the use of EC2 SSM. Yeah, David and I are here to answer any questions or looking forward to more of your suggestions. Thanks.